War is an algorithm. We will show its price. In February 2022, a Russian family had $10,000 in a bank account. By April of that year, the purchasing power of that money had collapsed. Not because the bank failed, not because of theft, because the ruble lost nearly half its value in 2 weeks, and the savings that represented years of work vanished in days. This is one of the least visible costs of war. No missile hits a savings account, no bomb destroys a family's net worth. But currency collapse does exactly that. Silently, mathematically, and with a speed that no household can defend against. We are going to show you how war destroys the middle class in a matter of weeks. The mechanism. A currency serves 2 functions. It is a medium of exchange. You use it to buy things. And it is a store of value. You hold it because it preserves your wealth over time. When a country goes to war, both functions degrade simultaneously. Confidence collapses first. Capital flight follows. Foreign investors exit. Domestic savers rush to convert their holdings into foreign currency or physical assets. The central bank either prints money to cover wartime deficits, which inflates the currency, or raises interest rates to defend it, which crushes economic activity. Neither option is costless. Both destroy savings. This is not a rare event. It is one of the most predictable economic consequences of armed conflict. And it hits hardest not the wealthy, who hold assets in multiple currencies and jurisdictions, but the middle class, the people who kept their savings in the local bank, in the local currency, because that is what responsible, stable citizens do in peacetime. Lebanon, the textbook collapse. Lebanon is the case study. Between 2019 and 2024, the Lebanese pound lost over 98% of its value against the US dollar. A currency that traded at 1/500 to the dollar in 2019 was worth 89,500 to the dollar by late 2024. Experts estimate that roughly $100 billion in depositor wealth was wiped out by this financial meltdown. Not stolen by a single actor. Evaporated through a combination of currency devaluation, banking restrictions, and economic collapse accelerated by conflict. They said, Lebanese banks are safe, deposits are guaranteed, the system is stable. They got banks locked depositors out of their own accounts. Withdrawal limits made it impossible to access savings. The currency became worthless in months. GDP fell more than 50%, from $52 billion in 2019 to $23 billion in 2021. The 2024 conflict with Israel compounded what was already one of the worst financial crises since the 1850s. The World Bank estimated the total impact of the 2024 war at $14 billion, $6.8 billion in physical damage, and $7.2 billion in economic losses. The conflict cut real GDP growth by at least 6.6% in a single year. An estimated 166,000 people lost their jobs directly due to the fighting. But the savings destruction had already happened. The war accelerated a collapse that the financial system had been engineering for years. For the Lebanese middle class, which had once made Beirut one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the Middle East, the result was the same. Poverty rates reached 73% when education and living costs were factored in. The economy dollarized. Remittances from the diaspora became the primary lifeline for millions of families still inside the country. Myanmar, war meets currency freefall. Myanmar presents a different variant of the same mechanism. The military coup of February 2021 triggered a cascade of economic destruction that continues today. Between 2020 and 2024, Myanmar's GDP contracted by 9%, reversing a full decade of economic progress. The kyat, Myanmar's currency, plummeted from 1,330 per US dollar in 2021 to 4,520 in 2025, a decline of over 240%. Inflation reached 25.4% in 2024. Private investment, both domestic and foreign, has effectively ceased. Nearly half the population now lives below the poverty line. The economy has been blacklisted by the Financial Action Task Force, cutting it off from international financial systems. The currency collapse did not happen because of a single event. It happened because war destroyed the conditions that make currency stable: functioning institutions, rule of law, predictable government policy, and investor confidence. Each of these conditions eroded simultaneously. The result was a self-reinforcing spiral. Weaker currency meant higher import prices. Higher prices meant more money printing to cover deficits. More money printing meant further currency weakness. The cycle locked in. Meanwhile, Myanmar's illicit economy has expanded to fill the vacuum. The country has become the world's leading producer of opium and heroin, and one of the largest manufacturers of methamphetamines. The jade industry, valued at billions of dollars annually, operates with no regulation. Illegal gambling and human trafficking have flourished. This is what happens when a legitimate economy collapses. The illegitimate one expands to replace it. Russia, the ruble's controlled demolition. Russia's experience is structurally different, but the savings destruction is real. Within 2 weeks of the February 2022 invasion, the ruble depreciated from 80 to the dollar to 120. The central bank raised interest rates to 20% in an emergency move. Capital controls were imposed overnight. Russians were forbidden from moving foreign currency abroad. Withdrawals of foreign currency from banks were capped. They said, sanctions will collapse the Russian economy. They got a temporary stabilization, followed by a slow, structural erosion that is now accelerating. The ruble fell 40% between December 2022 and September 2023. By November 2024, it experienced its sharpest single-week decline since 2022. Annual inflation reached 8.78% and is rising. The U.S. Treasury calculated that Russia's economy is now over 5% smaller than pre-invasion projections predicted. Energy revenues declined nearly 40% between January and October 2023 compared to 2022. Half of Russia's foreign exchange reserves remain frozen by Western sanctions. The damage to Russian households is measured in a different way than in Lebanon or Myanmar. Russia did not experience hyperinflation, but it experienced something equally corrosive: the permanent emigration of wealth and human capital. Around 668,000 people left Russia in 2022, a 71% increase over the prior 5-year average. These are disproportionately young, educated, skilled workers. They took their savings, their skills, and their future productivity with them. This is savings destruction through a different channel. Not inflation, not bank failure, but the rational decision of an entire generation of Russians that their wealth and their future are better preserved outside the country. The economic cost is not visible in exchange rate tables. It is visible in productivity data, in innovation metrics, and in demographic projections, all of which are deteriorating. The compounding dynamic. Currency collapse does not destroy wealth once, it destroys it continuously. When the Chinese pound lost 98% of its value, a family's savings did not drop by 98% in a single day. The devaluation happened in stages, with occasional stabilizations that encouraged people to hold their remaining balances. Each stabilization was followed by another decline. Each decline erased another layer of savings. This is by design, not in the sense that any government planned it, but in the sense that the economic incentives produce this outcome reliably. Central banks in crisis prefer gradual devaluation to sudden collapse, because sudden collapse triggers bank runs. Gradual devaluation achieves the same result, while keeping the population in place long enough to absorb the losses. The result? Depositors lose money not because they made a bad decision, but because they made the rational decision that every financial advisor would have recommended in time. Save, hold, be patient. In time, that advice becomes a wealth destruction mechanism. Who pays? Who profits? Currency collapse is not a zero-sum event. Someone benefits. In Lebanon, the financial elite, who held assets in dollars, in real estate, in accounts abroad, preserved their wealth while the population absorbed the losses. The banking system itself, which had been running what the World Bank described as one of the largest financial Ponzi schemes in modern history, transferred the losses to depositors. In Myanmar, the military junta controls access to natural resources, jade, timber, minerals, whose dollar value has not collapsed, along with the kyat. The regime's purchasing power has actually increased relative to the civilian population. In Russia, the state has imposed extraordinary profit levies on resource companies. Gazprom paid a one-time levy in 2022. Transneft followed in 2024. The government captures value from the resource sector, while the cost of imported goods, paid for in weakened rubles, falls on households. War does not destroy wealth equally. It redistributes it, from populations to elites, from future generations to present power structures, from the middle class, which has no hedge against currency risk, to those who do. The final calculation. Lebanon, $100 billion in depositor wealth destroyed. GDP cut in half. Myanmar, currency down 240%. GDP contracted 9% in 4 years. Half the population in poverty. Russia, economy 5% below projections. 668,000 people emigrated in 1 year. Inflation accelerating. Reserves frozen. These are not comparable crises. The causes, the scales, and the mechanisms differ, but the outcome is the same in every case. The middle class, the economic backbone of any society, absorbs the cost, not through taxation, not through policy, through the silent mathematical destruction of the currency in which their savings are denominated. War destroys armies, but it destroys savings faster. Subscribe to What War Costs. The cost that hits hardest is always the one you cannot see coming.